Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here on Friday evening. My name is Anne-Solène Léa, and I am the Audiovisual Program Officer at the French Institute of Israel. I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the French Institute and of the French Embassy. As part of La Fête de l'Animation, in association with the Animation Union of Israel and in partnership with Animation International Animation Festival in Jerusalem, we are glad to welcome today Simon Rouby, director of the movie Adama, and Pablo Pico, composer of the movie soundtrack. Thank you again for being here with us today. I will now hand over to Amit Gicelter, founder and executive producer of the Israeli studio The Hive, and board member of the Animation Union of Israel, who will open the discussion. Thank you.
So hi everyone and welcome. We are here to have a lovely conversation and hear a bit more about the movie Adama from the creators. And I would love to, if you guys have any questions or you would like to say something, please use the Q&A in order to add these, to send it over to me, and I'll be able to reply that to the team. So, Simon and Pablo, nice to meet you. It's lovely to have you. Let's start maybe by a little introduction. Simon, would you start, please?
Hi, my name is Simon Rouby. I'm a French filmmaker. Studied in Paris Gobelin School, and after graduation went straight to this project that we're going to discuss today called Adama. And so Julien Lilti, the scriptwriter, brought it to me in 2007 as he was just also out of script writing school, and we just started working from there on, and took us 7 years to do it. And Pablo was there from the beginning too.
Incredible. Pablo, what about you?
Yes, so I'm Pablo Pico. I'm a French music composer. I started out my career with commas more as a musician, as a percussionist. So percussion is my main instruments. And I have a classical background, and I dived into music composition for films maybe 10 years ago with animated films, first Gobelin student films. And that leads me to meet Simon and to start composing for great films like Adama, and then I go on my way in animated films.
Amazing. I would like to also mention before we start that you can see the film online for free for the next 2 days. It is available on the website that I'm sending you now in the chat. So if you would like to see it, or following this conversation, or if you've seen it before, that would be amazing. So Simon, I mean, we want to, Adama, first of all, is a very Israeli word. So what is the connection, if there is one?
Well, I guess it's a very ancient word because it's the first encounter I had with the name is in West Africa, especially in Mali and Burkina Faso. It's a common first name, Adama.
Really?
And Julien Lilti, the scriptwriter, also knew a young kid called Adama in Burkina Faso. So that, I guess that's where also one of the inspiration came from. But then we knew as well that it's an Israeli word, and I mean, I've been saying over and over that it means play, right? Or
earth. It's ground.
So thanks for confirming this to me now 5 years later. But yeah, that's what we knew as well, and it made sense with the project because the characters are all made of clay. It's a very, I mean, it's also Adam. There's something with the story that sort of starts in this ideal village that's sort of Garden of the Eden. So there's a whole And then obviously the war is a version of hell. So there's like the second layer of reading that maybe is more accessible from the title on for Israeli, but that's supposed to be here for everybody. So
I know, it's beautiful. I think it was a really compelling word to bring me into the film, especially when I saw it for the first time only in a few days ago, and I really enjoyed it. I think it was a really interesting film that is worth seeing because it has so many layers to it. Maybe tell us a bit about the film, about how did the story come to be, like with the script and everything.
So, I mean, the film is really about the relationship, sort of the colonial history of France and the sort of shared history between West Africa and France throughout history. It's kind of based on historical facts. The Black Force, the so-called Black Force, was real. It existed. It existed before the First World War, but just grew intensively during the First World War. A lot of people from the French colonies in West Africa and also other places like Reunion Island or other parts of Africa were drafted as, in French we say, Senegalese foot soldiers, but they would come from everywhere. Now in 1998, the French government started to count how many soldiers were still alive from the First World War. So it was 80 years after the end of the war. Obviously, a lot of people were not here anymore, and so they were, as far as the Black Force was concerned, they only seemed to be one soldier called Abdoulaye Ndiaye, Senegalese old man, over 100 years old. And they decided to give the Légion d'honneur, which is like a medal of merit, to all the soldiers that fought in the First World War. But the story was that when they came to give him the medal, the French ambassador in Senegal came and gave him the medal. He passed away the day before, the 10th of November 98, which was the day before the 11th of November and the celebration of the end of the war. So it was it's just a very symbolic story that led Julien to want to talk about it with a film, and that's where the project started.
That's amazing. And so this was your first long film feature project?
Sure, yeah. As I said earlier, I was just out of school, so I had a couple of short films, student short films that I'd done. But that was really it, and it was quite ambitious to just say, okay, we just graduated, our next thing is a feature film. You know, that's also why it took a little while, because the producers would look at us like, you know, who are you? What do you think? Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
But around that time, Pablo Pico was also hanging out in Gobelin because he had left a note in the cafeteria, like, I'm a composer and I can compose music for films, for short films.
Brilliant.
And so the team was like, Julien had the idea. I was lined up as a director, and Pablo was immediately the composer, and it's just three young men out of school having a feature film project.
Incredible. So how did you guys start, like, the research, the development of this? I mean, maybe Pablo, from your perspective, I mean, how did you come to join the team and start, like, looking into the history, but also the, you know, the visual and audio visual aspect of this?
Yeah, first Simon told us that with the cafeteria note, that was the start.
But a bit stuck.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
maybe points. But about Adama, that it was. I was very little experienced, so my connection doesn't work.
No, it's okay.
You're back.
Okay, but when he talked me about the project, it was maybe 8 years 8 years before 2015, so the release. So it was a long time ago, and it was very vague, very. But there was the story of this child called Adama, and the mix between the Africa and the war. And when you are a composer, you just wondering how to mix these elements together, how to put them together between the African point of view of a child and this huge thing and terrible thing, which is the war. So
it's also a non-experience from you guys. I mean, it's through the eyes of a kid. You need to really look at this perspective and look at that history part. So, I mean, how did you develop like the storyline? I mean, because did Julien come with a script, or you had to work with him on the script? Sorry.
No, it's Julien. It's him. Well, he was quite advanced into a TV series project. He wanted to do a longer story that would just not end at every end of episode, and so that's where we started from, and there were a lot of ideas already built on this format. But then, as soon as we started working together, the fact that I could suddenly bring imagery to his ideas led to a few changes in direction. And then also early on, we decided that we wanted to make it a feature film and not make it a series. So that also allowed us to a little slight change in the tone of the story, where suddenly we knew that if you go to the feature film format, you're going to the cinema, you're going to the theater. Even though we stayed with the intention to make a film for younger audiences, we knew that we could have more of a second layer, because suddenly we knew that adults would also be watching. So from there on, we had this sort of 2 layers of storytelling going on, where the first one is very much a coming of age tale and an adventure that can be followed by a kid, maybe children starting 7 years old. And then again, like something a little like a deeper meaning, deeper understanding that's more about colonization and even what it is to make war, what it is for somebody from West Africa to discover another culture in this context. Because for us, those subject matters are very much still relevant today. We decided on the reasons why the older brother of Adama goes to Europe is still quite relevant today with everything that's going on through the Mediterranean. And also the First World War sort of was the starting point of a whole century of immigration. So yeah, that's how it evolved.
Amazing. Maybe let's jump into the production aspect. I mean, first of all, maybe the technique. Okay, I mean, we have a question from the viewers, like they were asking, how did you create the characters to be so realistic? But maybe we can discuss how did you come to the visual aspect of the film?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen and maybe show some stuff. Is this working? Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the idea, I mean, again, the idea of the story has a very documentary aspect to it, because it came from historical facts, and so. But then there's a whole coming of age tale aspect, and the whole story was very importantly was told from Adama's point of view. So we really knew that we wanted to have those 2 layers of something quite realistic and something that could suddenly evolve into something more poetic. And so this, for instance, is one of the first drawings that I had, and then I was looking for the character more with a painted angle. But soon enough, I worked with a sculptor called Michel Loricella, and he created characters in clay, and so the clay sort of triggered something that suddenly we had something that was reinterpreted by artistically, but still felt realist, and it was the good mix between the two. So we use those clay figures quite precisely because we decided to scan them in 3D. Mm-hmm. And so with that's what you see now with a lot of different photos from a lot of different angles, we are able to get a very precise scan of the sculpture, and therefore have something more asymmetrical, more chaotic than if it was really properly made with CGI. So yeah, this angle of using sculptures and translating them exactly as they are to the screen was definitely what led to the final look of the film.
It's really beautiful to see how you use the textures of the Adama, of the clay itself, in order to like really create the visual. Because usually when you go to 3D, some people go to a more smooth look, like in the Disney's and Pixar films, but you actually chose to make something a bit rough. So that's really awesome. I mean,
because
sorry.
I think really, I think it's hard to mimic chaos. It's hard to mimic something that's organic with a computer. And the best way to do it is to do it with bare hands in a studio space and not only in a virtual digital space.
Mm-hmm. So all the characters you scanned, or there were some that you literally created all in the 3D realm?
Well, all the faces were scanned, and then all the bodies were made into the 3D realm. But the faces, the detail of the faces, they all come from sculptures.
Incredible. And so the team was entirely French, right?
No, not really. The team, I mean, the entire production was made on Reunion Island, which is a French island next to Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. Mm-hmm. And so that's a French territory that also has a colonial history and a slavery history. Mm-hmm. And we decided that the whole film would be made there. And so what happened was a few people from pre-production came down with me to Reunion Island, and then we worked with as much as we could with people who came from Reunion Island, so French people from Reunion Island. But then there was also 1/3 of the team that came from the general area of Indian Ocean. So mm-hmm. India, we managed to have a couple of artists from Madagascar and also Australia. So the fact that they were here also allowed us to, the whole studio to switch to English and not have this sort of face-to-face between, metropole France, like central France and remote former colonial islands. We didn't want to recreate that sort of relationship in the studio, obviously. So the fact that it was more international allowed us to open up.
How long was the process, the animation process of the film?
Well, I mean, we spoke earlier with Pablo that it was altogether maybe 7 years, 7-8 years. But most of it in the beginning was the writing process and the funding. But then when eventually we got into pre-production, the pre-production and the storyboarding lasted maybe for a year. And then the production itself lasted for a year and a half.
That's great.
So it was quite quick at the end. In the last 2 years and a half, everything happened. The animation itself was maybe 7-8 months.
7-8 months, yeah. And so how did you come about to like start from my personal aspect, I mean, financing such a film? it took you 7 years. It took you a long time to raise the cost. When did you meet your producers? Was that in France? Or?
I met the producers quite early on, I guess maybe 2009. They called Naya Production. They were quite experienced into the cinema world. Philippe Aigle had already done important films with when he was the head of the company called MK2 in France. Mm-hmm. And then he met with Séverine Latuyère, who came more from theater originally. And they created this company called Naya. And Adama was one of the first feature film projects they had lined up. And so they trusted me very early on. And I think they could definitely vouch to say that it was a tough funding process, because there was never any sort of censorship, even though you could say the boards of decisions are mostly made of mostly white, you know. So it's not that they wouldn't see a black man character or anything like that, but they would maybe not be as aware of all of that as they could have. And again, like, even though, I mean, the other angle that was a little difficult is like, okay, it's still about a kid in the war, so it's not a preschool film. It's not a film for Christmas, and that was difficult. That made it difficult to fund.
That was good, but it's great. I mean, Pablo, from your perspective, I mean, it took so long until you really jumped into the production aspect. During that time, what was your angle of how to develop the music? And still, again, it's still always in development. Everything was changing a lot. So how would you see your part in the music aspect as you developed the film? Like, how, until you got to the point where you really had to, compose the music with an orchestra. There's on Pablo's website, there's an amazing behind the scenes footage and of how was the music made and what with the different instruments. So it's wonderful to check it out. I'll attach the link to the chat. But Pablo, maybe could you mention a bit about until the point where production was on its way? What was your aspect? How did you develop the music?
I didn't develop something. I didn't compose very early, but I worked anyway, because I was following the whole process. I was very often calling Simon and Julien just to take some news about the project. And I was following the writing of the script, and it was quite important because we had to make choices before the production, choices about the instruments, and especially the instruments of Abdou, with one of the main character, and who was playing the flute. And that was this kind of question that was it was very important to answer that questions before the production itself. But when you are a composer, it's always good to meet people, and to, even if you don't work and produce mock-up right now, it's very important to meet people quite early, I think.
No, I think it's really important. I mean, it's wonderful to see the connection between you two, because as a creator myself, it's very important to involve the music right from the essence of the story, right, Simon? It's like it helps also the development of the story. So that could be something that we can pass on to people.
It helps a lot for writing, because writing a script is a very tough, difficult process, because you have to think about everything beforehand. The fact that Pablo was here able to answer, because, for instance, this character Abdou, who's a very important character in the film, didn't always play the flute in previous versions of the script. He used to played different instruments. I think he played a harp, a kora at some point, an African harp. But it was really through conversation with Pablo that he ended up on the flute, and then that led to him being more of a guide character, because the flute is that kind of an instrument. This instrument is for somebody who's guiding. So, I mean, the fact that the instrument switched in his hand entirely changed the character, you know. So it was very good, even though it was not. It was difficult to start really recording anything before the very end of the animation process. Mm-hmm. It was a very helpful conversation.
That's great. So, I mean, let's delve into the story. I mean, would you like to maybe show us a few of like, how did you come to visualize the script and the story as you went ahead?
Sure. I have some elements of the making of here. Well, straight from the script writing, we went into a very detailed storyboard that I'm scrolling through right now. That was sort of a rough 2D version of the film. So I'm actually going backwards.
And you worked on this process for around a year, you mentioned, with a team?
I think so, yes. There was I started alone, but then quickly realized that I was not Satoshi Kon, and I needed to get some help, and called some talented artists to just help me with the storyboarding. At the beginning, I would mostly draw the rough storyboard, and they would help me sort of clean it up. But then very quickly, we got into a more of a trustful team relationship where they also storyboarded chunks of the film themselves. So that's what you see now is quite precise. Also because that's where I come from to the animation originally, and also the people I've worked with on the storyboard, that's where they originally came from. So yeah,
I would add just a quick note saying that storyboarding is a very essential part of the animation process. It's usually something that you have to create in order to understand the composition of your shots and the composition of your film before you jump into the animation.
Exactly, and also because the whole, that's what I'm showing now, the edited storyboard called the animatic. That's the main working tool, because that's the tool on which you're gonna record the voices, and for a good 75% of the process, the film exists in this version, sort of black and white drawn version. So it's a crucial tool for everybody.
And it takes a long time to get it right. I mean, it's never precise in the first time, and you keep on revisioning and you keep on fixing it and updating it as you go along, even towards the end. So you were working on this process for at least a year, correct?
Yes.
And that was actually the basis for something that Pablo could even start working on musically, like from the musician aspect, right?
Actually, I don't remember having worked on
so early on
animatic.
You jumped the moment the animation was there already, the layouts.
Yeah, I remembered I composed themes with the flute and with the percussions also for the ceremony scenes, and some of the main themes, main melodies. But I think I started to work with the pictures when it was colorized and at the beginning of the animation process. Yeah, as far as I remember, maybe I.
The thing is that what I remember is that Pablo would send us themes, and then I would work, because also Pablo was not in Reunion Island. He was working remotely at the beginning, so I was receiving Pablo's tracks for themes, and then we would add it to the edit, and so it was also a triangle relationship with Pablo, myself, and the editor.
No? So tell me about the concept art we see here.
So these are actually final backgrounds. So so let's just go back. So after the animatic, there was so the characters we said are CGI 3D characters, but then there was once the animatic was done, there was a 3D layout that I'm showing here. That was sort of a translate. So you can see on the top left the storyboard frame, and then everything was translated into this sort of very rough 3D environment. It's kind of hard to watch at times, but it was very helpful to give an idea of the perspective, because, for instance, this shot would then go to the background team, and they would create a 2D background out of it. So they would have the shapes, the main shapes you can see there in transparency. They had the shapes of the 3D layout underneath, and they would draw on top of it with quite some freedom, but still respecting the general perspective of the shot. And then the color team would paint the background, the final background. But the fact that it was always mapped onto a 3D shape underneath it allowed us to do some what we call camera mapping, which is basically like a theater set where you're just projecting those images on the 3D shapes to give an illusion of depth, and so allow the 3D characters to evolve in this painted background seamlessly.
It sounds like very cost efficient as well, because you don't need to texturize every house and every mountain and everything.
Exactly. I mean, Adama has, let's say, I never really made decisions, economic decisions that would step over the artistic intentions. But let's say between 3 or 4 ideas that I liked as much, I would pick the one that was cheaper, you know.
Independent.
Yeah. So you see the 3D modeling is very minimal. But then in the final, I think I have the final shot here. So, you know, there's a little camera. I don't know if it reads on Zoom, but there's a little camera.
You feel it.
Yeah. That's something you don't quite see, but you can really feel. It gives you it makes you believe into the whole existence, the existence of the environment.
No, it's beautiful. Was everything done with Maya, right? Autodesk Maya?
Yes.
That's great. So, I mean, the process of like the matte painting, I wouldn't say the matte painting, but maybe the projection, that was done in parallel to the animation, or before that when you were laying out the scenes?
Well, the thing is, like, the whole process was a bit of a prototype. And so we had to think of what we call the pipeline, because it's frame by frame animation over 1,000 shots. So it has to be a little bit of a factory, you know, so you create a pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we created the pipeline, we put this process of what we call camera mapping, which is projecting those backgrounds. We put it really in the center. So the camera mapping team was really the one that was gathering information from animators, background artists, layout artists, and then we'd send it to final compositing. And so we really created a specific process for the film.
That's brilliant. So, I mean, and all this was done during your time on the island, on the...
Yes, we worked with the studio there called Picco, and we sort of we became the first feature film that they made entirely in their studio. We sort of relaunched this studio, and yeah, then everybody was there. So it was a chance to be able to make everything in one place as well, and not having to split the production into pieces that would be sent in different studios.
Inspiration-wise, I mean, where did your inspirations for the film come from? I mean, did you have any like animators or visual artists that you followed that brought you to where you are today?
Oh, there's plenty. There's plenty inspirations. I would say for this project, the research was made really tailor-made for the project. So there was so much research going into trying to recreate plausible West Africa from this period of time. There's a lot of reading from you know, even it's sometimes problematic post-colonial readings, but still readings from the anthropology, French anthropology from the 30s. I say problematic because most of the French museum are filled with artwork from West Africa that was not really acquired into the best circumstances. But still, it was difficult to find documentation otherwise. And then luckily, the First World War is something that's been really covered and very intensively researched and documented. So that was very accessible.
That's really amazing. So I mean, what after finalizing the film? I mean, after finalizing it in the studio, you brought it back to the post-production sound. Was that done in France, in Paris, or also over there?
No, it was done in Paris. That's when I reconnected with Pablo and we recorded the music. And so the music and the music recording, music mixing, and also the grading of the images were done in a couple of weeks in Paris at the end of when I came back from reading with the final images, which made us quite jealous because we frame by frame animators, it takes us 7 years, and then, you know, not jealous of Pablo because he worked for years as well, but the people who recorded the music show up in the morning and just read from the partition.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but it probably was. I mean, from what I've seen, it's like you had an orchestra behind you. You had a lot of elements that you had to like mix together. So, I mean, how was that process for you, Pablo?
How was the experience? The connection was not very good.
How was the experience of working with this kind of like grand team?
Yeah, grand team. Yeah, that was the first time, and that was the first time for me. So I was like a beginner. But I was not a beginner in music, and I was quite experienced with the orchestra because I used to be a musician, an orchestra musician before, playing triangle before the orchestra. So I know pretty well this world of classical musician who, like Simon was saying, they come to the studio without knowing anything about the project, and they play, and it's the music of the film, and it's going to be recorded, and it's quite magical. But yeah, that was a bit the challenge of this music, to mix all these elements and to make people feel the originality of Adama, of this project, which is not an animated film like others, and all this spiritual or maybe mysterious aspect in the music.
I really loved how you intertwined the modern aspect with the spiritual aspect of the African music, because in essence, towards, I mean, I'm kind of spoiling it, but towards the end, you have a beautiful, the theme of the music. And it's always, I always admire the musicians who manage to keep the themes throughout the storyline, because the musical theme stays with you even towards the end. And that's it's a beautiful aspect of how you've managed to do that towards the the finale in the end.
Yes, but it's a work that we did together with Simon. It's not only the responsibility of the composer. It's both the responsibility of the composer and of the directors. And because I remember, but we were looking for music that would fit that would work not only for a scene or for a sequence, but for the whole film. Just trying to imagine, to think the music for feature film, basically for cinema, not only for synchronism and you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how would you guys feel, I mean, when finalizing the movie? It took so long and it was such a passion project, and finally got done. You managed to get the distribution through Na Productions, right? They were in charge of distribution as well. And
at the beginning, so when I met Philippe and Séverine, they were so from Naya Production. They were starting Naya Production, but the background of Philippe Aigle was in distribution.
Okay.
Luckily, a couple of years after we started working with them as producers, they also stepped back into production and acquired into distribution, acquired a distribution company called Océan Film. So they distributed the film themselves, which was crucial because that's the kind of film that really benefits from that, because it's a film that needs to sort of be, organized, accompagné in French, taken by the hand, because it's not that easy to access. Maybe people will look at the film from the trailer and be like, oh, it's scary, it's not for my kid, because it's a kid in the war. But then, so they did this sort of deep field work where we worked with NGOs and also worked with the school system, the education system in France. And even though the release of the film was not like a blockbuster, we're still talking about it now, like 5 years later, and that's not the only occasion. There's multiple screenings even to this day.
Oh wow!
So yeah, it's a film that was really that took the time it deserved, sort of to spread and to make an effect.
It's also, as you mentioned, it's a historical aspect. Historically, it's correct. I mean, they did bring these soldiers from Africa to fight in our wars in a way, and it's a kind of a crazy situation. So it's a beautiful way of doing that.
Yeah, and today, like in France, the systemic consequences of colonization are very vivid. There's a ghettoization of these populations into the suburbs of the big cities. So for history teachers who want to address the subject matter of the First World War, it's a good tool as well to be able to show this angle of history, because it's not, as it's a saying, it's not history the way it's told in the history books. The history books are always written by the people who conquered, the history is always made by the dominating people. So it's a tool amongst a lot of others to be able to tackle history in a different angle.
I mean, I really admired the way you finalized it's a fairy tale in a way, okay? Because the way that it's finalized at the end, I really enjoyed that, because it wasn't a typical ending for me when it comes to these kinds of situations of like seeing the long journey home. It was simple and beautiful. And Abdou, in a way, I mean, I would love to hear your aspect of Abdou, because as you mentioned, throughout the production, he changed. So, I mean, what was the essence of him for you?
I mean, I don't know exactly how Abdou came about, but I know he evolved from the bad guy sort of character. There was like an evil, like, you know, sort of character somewhere in the earlier versions of the script that was like a bit of a shady character. And I think from there, maybe if Julien was here, would remember better. But from there, we also had to create this sort of plausible cosmogony for the village, where these people, this small village comes from, is hidden into the cliffs. And so it sort of, it allows us to tell the story really from Adama's point of view. And everything that's outside this little cliff is the world of winds. And so it came that in order to make this plausible, they would have to sort of pray a spirit of the cliffs. And then at some point, those two characters connected. The sort of shady guy became also maybe the ally and the guide, and got a flute and became the spirit, the sort of personification of the spirit of the cliffs. It's like, it's a spirit, it's a character that's seen it all. It's an archetype for a spirit character that's known, that knows everything. So
yeah, the how do you call him, the spirit guide, the spirit guide from these Indians, from the Indian tales and the like,
yeah,
the age.
I think maybe you think of a shaman or something, but
shaman, exactly.
I think it's in West Africa. There's a name for also the griot, the griot, which is a cast of musicians and storytellers. So he's also sort of speaking out loud, like there's an influence from the figure of the Rasta. And that's also a conversation we had with Pablo. I was trying to push reggae music upon him, and so also I think the drums are kind of influenced by a sort of what's called Nyabingi Rasta ceremony. So it all came together within those conversations. But I know that I remember in our conversation with Pablo, we really felt like we were onto something when he brought the idea of strings, like the string ensemble that would be sort of the secondary layer of Adama's understanding of an evolution. And this, when you hear those strings, that's the theme you're talking about, you always go back to him as a character, puts you with. And then Abdou is then a musical character, because he kind of sings and plays the flute on screen. And there's also some instruments that are related to childhood that are part of versions of the theme that evolve from, if you hear the first version of the theme against the last version, it evolves slowly to something more adult. So
wow, okay, that's amazing. I mean, I would there's a question from the attendees, very interesting actually. How do you choose the voices for your characters? I mean, does it come first from the voice or after the design? How did you come about to the decision?
Well, there was definitely a casting. It was made by a casting director called Marie Bureau. She did a great job at finding the proper voices, and obviously the voice of Adama that we had to look for.
He's an actor.
She just saw him on a billboard. He played in another film about the Paris suburbs, and she saw him, never heard his voice, but just from the way he looked, she was like, I need to hear this kid's voice. It's probably going to be the right voice, and it eventually was. Then there was also a voice that came from also kind of a musical end, because the character of Joe, this tall sort of older brother figure in the film, is a French musician, singer called Oxmo Puccino, and his voice is famous here, and that's the other way around. When we wrote the character, we always thought, okay, this character is Oxmo, and then of course when we wanted to record the voice of this character, we immediately asked the Oxmo's manager, and he accepted. And so he's also the artist who created, who wrote a text for the credits, the end credits.
But you also modeled the character on the way.
Yeah, the way he looks.
That's really awesome. So I mean, so first of all, you had characters that like voices that suited the characters that you already designed, but there were some that you did based on the voice itself. So that's what's incredible. All right, and yeah, I saw on Pablo's site the music that he said that he recorded, like the end credit voice. That's brilliant. Do you think that the film affected the way that France like sees its position on recruiting African soldiers? I mean, has it changed politically something, do you feel? This is a bit of a grander question, I would say, but I mean, do you see that there was an influence of your film on the climate in France?
Really, I don't know.
Yeah, please, Pablo, answer. What do you think?
No, really, I don't know. What I know is that the film is always on screens, thanks to the educational programs which program the films very often. Teachers are dealing. Choose the film to show it to their pupils, to the children. So it's an element of comprehension of our story, which is complicated. And but I don't know if it changed some things to the official history. But really, I'm not aware of the of the official I don't know way to tell this history, and I don't know.
How about you, Simon? Do you think that it made a change of some sort?
I think honestly, I think we only try. It's only a tool. It's not the tool that changes the world. You know, we just made a tool that teachers can use if they want. It's available to them. That's what counts. That's what matters, I think. So, you know, when it comes from the conversation, like, does art changes the world? It's a vast subject. But in this case, I think it was really trying to put a tool, another tool on the table, and everybody, you know, that could just be a piece of the puzzle. Honestly, there's a lot to do still. You know, in a sort of a sad irony, one of the main figures of police violence in France is called Adama.
Oh, wow.
Died into very controversial circumstances at the hand of the police 4 years ago. And so, you know, there's a lot to do in France to sort of address the systemic racism and the post-colonial issues. And I don't know that Adama, the film, would definitely not be enough to solve the problem, but it's just one more piece of the building.
No, it's incredible. I think that using animation, I'm sure that you weren't expecting this kind of effect like in the education system, and it's great that it's part of that, that it continues and it thrives there. How do you perceive them yourselves, like after you finished a film 5 years ago? So I mean, where you keep traveling with the film, you keep having these kinds of webinars with around the world, I guess. I mean, do you see the film, like, where do you see yourselves with this film in the next 5 years, maybe? Pablo? Yeah.
You know, just I had a problem issue with my connection just during your question.
I mean, I'm interested in hearing, like, the film, you finalized the film 5 years ago. Where do you see yourselves, like, today? I mean, you keep on interviewing about the film, but does this film, has a long connection? It keeps on growing. You keep on showing this film.
Yeah, just speaking of me, I just showed the film 1 week ago in a very little theater, cinema theater in Brittany, in a village. One screen, and I took my child with me, my son, who is 9 years old, with a nephew, even much younger, maybe six years old. But it was so I was asked to present the film, and I saw it for the first time since for a long time ago. It's a long time ago. So, but it was kind of rediscovering the film, and it works. The film still works. It's still a strong film. People are still moved, and it's very moving and good to feel it, of course, even with the young people. And to me, I think it's a great film about, of course, this colonization background and what we learned about this period. But it's a great film about the war. Mm-hmm. Great war film. One of the best I saw. I was really surprised to rediscover the film. It was so strong. 5 years after, because when you just finish a film, you don't like to see it very often.
You need to distance yourself.
Yeah, you need to distance yourself, and to see it with my son 5 years, maybe four years after. It was quite good experience.
Was it his first time watching the film, or is it?
Yeah, that was his first time, because he was too young when the film released, and I'm not with my Adama DVD at home. Children. Let's see the dad's film. Yeah.
I mean, when it came out originally in 2015, how was the reaction to it? I mean, it was at ainsi. How were you at the premiere? Not during the corona, so it was a good. You were able to make a bit, yes. How was the experience over there? How were the reactions to the film when it originally came out?
I don't know, but as far as I remember, it was very, really moving. Mm-hmm. It's for every filmmakers who shows his film in ainsi, it's the same, but no, it was really moving. It was a good premiere. I remember. But Simon maybe has another souvenir.
Were you able to watch the film after you finished it? I mean, it's usually, you need some time. So,
well, it's definitely difficult to watch it when you've been doing it frame by frame for the last 2 years or 3 years. And also the way it's done, the reviews, you watch every shot a million times and try to see if there was like a little pixel that was missing and everything. So that's hard to get out of this vision. Actually, the music helps a lot, the sound as well, because we speak about the music, but Jan Volsi, who works a lot with Pablo, was a sound editor. And so he's also a composer, and they work together a lot. So it's also like they have a duo going on as well. And the fact that I came back from Reunion Island maybe in March of 2015 with the final images, but a very rough sound, and that in like 3-4 weeks, the sound was done and just came out of the recording. Then I was able very quickly to look at the film with another angle of view. So that was luckily allowed me to see it. But the premiere was fine. I think it was fine. I don't know that everybody in the animation world loved it instantly, because it has some, it's kind of a collage, of a lot of different things, and it's not necessarily very clear at the beginning of the movie, especially where it's gonna go. Mm-hmm. But I had good feedback. But then when you just finish the film, even if 99 people tell you it's amazing, if one people tells you there's one thing missing, you just hear this person, you know, so it's not, that's the state of mind you're in. You're like in this huge baby blues. But every screening from the last 5 years was mostly a premiere for the audience, you know, and every time that that I had a screening, the Q&A behind it was always touching. Was it because of kids asking unexpected questions, or was it because we were projecting it in West Africa and it raised very important questions, or was it because we projected it in United States with, again, different questions, you know, so it's just a, you know, those projects are just the tip of the iceberg of a wider research that's just a lifetime research. And so, yeah, it's just, we just learn to live with it. And yeah, Adama is definitely somebody that exists for me.
And incredible. I mean, maybe for a final question, I mean, what are you currently working on today? I mean, where are you and now in your, what projects are you currently working on?
Pablo.
Yes, it would be hard to.
Pablo is a star.
But no, I'm not a star. But you know, as you explained it before, when you make music, it goes way faster than animation. Yeah. So now I work on different projects. Of course, a lot of animation, a bit of documentaries also. But a lot of animated film that just finished a special TV, which is a 26 minutes programs for televisions, and both cinema for Canal and France Télévisions, and which is called Maman pleut des cordes. That will be a great film. And I'm working on another feature film project called Sirocco by Benoît Schur, which is a French film also. And a lot of projects. I know Simon is preparing something, so I'm I'm spying what's happening on this side, and maybe I will work on another film with Anca Damian too, because I just worked with the Romanian director Anca Damian for the music of Marona, Fantastic Tale. Mm-hmm. And
amazing, folks. Yeah. Simon, you have anything to mention? Maybe.
Yes, I mean, my first reaction when I finished Adama was to go and do a lot of different things outside of animation, because that's also something I was always doing. I also worked a lot with dance and theater, and also video installation. So I was lucky to be a part of a couple art residencies in Rome and in Antarctica as well. So I just used the time to really reopen my process, and it's only since last year that I'm developing a new animated feature film that was Pablo was talking about. And so I'm still early on in the process. I'm working with a Miu Production, which is a Paris-based production company, and I'm still in the various steps of script writing and developing aesthetically. But yeah, Pablo will be hopefully the composer. I'm just working slowly, so he's gonna have time to do a couple more before getting this one.
He's waiting. Brilliant. I mean, do you have, I would like to finalize and just say thank you for all your hard work, and thank you for having the film online for us to watch and enjoy. I would also want to thank the French Institute and the French Embassy, and with their partnership with the animation Festival for bringing you over and being able to, I mean, hopefully we'll be able to do this live next time when you're coming to Israel. So, and until the next lockdown, I guess. So how long is the lockdown gonna be this time?
1 month.
Wow. Well, it goes really fast, trust us. It's That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you for talking to us today. And
Thanks a lot.
Hope we do it again. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.